Welcome to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Martha Greidick. I'm Dr. Martha Greidick. This podcast examines a wide variety of work-related issues through the lens of industrial and organizational psychology. And while many of the topics discussed here may be seen as intended for white-collar employees and their employers, in reality, the ideas presented here are applicable across organizations and industries. Additionally, many of the topics discussed here may be applicable outside of the workplace. I encourage you to examine what's presented here, apply what makes sense to you, and simply discard the rest. Difficult situations or experiences or people are a part of life. And while we can try to reduce such difficult situations or experiences or people or tasks or whatever the case may be, chances are that we can't reduce those things completely. So the best way to deal with that is to learn how to extract some piece of wisdom from a less than ideal or an unpleasant event or situation or experience. We teach children to look at disappointing experiences in ways that will allow them to learn lessons. So by the time we become adults, ideally, we should be experts at doing that. Of course, that's not always the case, but it's never too late to start. So whenever you encounter a situation or a person or a task or whatever it may be that is difficult or unpleasant, it's important that you look for an opportunity to learn something new. You may be wondering, how do I do that? Where do I start? Well, the first thing is to try and look at a situation or an event or a person or task or project, whatever this thing is, in an objective way. Sometimes it might be helpful to seek out some input from a third party, someone who is not in the midst of it, not related to what happened or what the situation may be, someone who would be as objective as possible. They might be able to help us to view the situation at hand or whatever the case is that we're looking at in a more objective way. Once you're able to zoom out a little bit and make sure that there are no heavy emotions associated with whatever you're examining, whatever you're looking at with the intention of learning something, then you can really start to dig into it to seek out those golden nuggets of wisdom. One of the things that you can do is look at your own reaction to the situation or event. Was your reaction beneficial to the overall situation? And that doesn't necessarily mean beneficial in the moment or maybe in the heat of the moment, but rather objectively and in terms of long term. Was your reaction representative of the kind of reaction you would like to have in the future? If not, that's a learning opportunity for you right there. But if it was the kind of reaction that you're proud of, that you can label as beneficial and something that you would like to be able to rely on in the future, then that's also a learning opportunity of what to do versus what not to do. As you further examine your own behavior as it relates to the situation that you're looking at, what was your behavior overall? Is it the kind of behavior that you would like to repeat if you were to encounter this kind of situation in the future? Or was your behavior not necessarily what you're proud of, something that you may want to change? Again, this is not to be judgmental or to make yourself feel guilty or to shame yourself. We're looking for learning opportunities. If we can't look at a situation objectively and seek out what lessons to learn, then we can't grow. So that's why this is so important, especially when we are surrounded by other people in the workplace. It's one thing when you're all by yourself and you have no one else to interact with, but that's not the case when we're at work. So the workplace needs to be a highly functional environment, and this is one of the ways that we can contribute to that. Just as we can look at our own behaviors and decide how we want to be and how we don't want to be in the future, whether we want to repeat any of our previous behaviors or do the exact opposite of whatever our behaviors were, we can also look at other people, their reactions, and their behaviors. And again, this is not in a way that will be judgmental or intended to shame anybody. We're looking for learning opportunities. So if you see someone handling themselves and handling a situation in a way that was appropriate and effective, you may want to make a mental note that perhaps you would like to model that person's behavior if you encounter a similar situation in the future. On the other hand, if you witness somebody's behavior that you would consider as detrimental or inappropriate or destructive or counterproductive, that's also a learning opportunity for you, making a mental note of how you don't want to be. So you can see that regardless of what situation we encounter, how we react, how others react, our own behaviors, other people's behaviors, are all learning opportunities as we move forward into the future. It's so easy to get caught up in the emotions and in judgments and maybe shaming yourself or others, but none of those things are productive and none of those things help you to grow as you move forward, which is why it's so important to bring this up. We are at work. We have to interact with other people. Sometimes situations are less than ideal. Sometimes you don't necessarily get along with someone, maybe more than one person. Sometimes there's a difficult or a tense situation. You know what kinds of things one can encounter at work. So it's so important that we do our best to contribute to making the work environment as comfortable and as pleasant for ourselves and for other people. And learning from different situations is one way to do that. Of course, this is applicable to so many different things, both at work and outside of the office space or the workplace. So whether we're looking at a project or task or a coworker at the office or at something outside of the workplace, maybe a neighbor or a situation with your spouse or maybe a book that you read that was disappointing, there's always something that we can learn from every experience or nearly every experience. So I highly encourage you to take on that approach, that kind of mindset. Then rather than being disappointed and complaining or belly aching or focusing on regrets, turn that around and look for learning opportunities. Because as long as you're learning, you're growing. And after all, that's one of our goals in life. As this episode comes to an end, let's look at what was discussed. This is all about looking for learning opportunities, regardless of what we encounter. This is both at the workplace and outside of work. So whether we're looking at a situation or an event or a task or a person or a book that we're reading, if it's something that isn't ideal, rather than complaining about it, we need to look for opportunities of what we can learn from it. This may be your own behavior, things that you would repeat because it was good, beneficial behavior, and things that you would change because it was not ideal or productive behavior. The same goes for observing others. There are people whose behavior we want to model, and there are people whose behavior inspires us to do the opposite and do better when faced with similar situations. As the week unfolds, I invite you to take a look at your own reactions to situations or people or projects that are less than ideal. Do you tend to focus on the negative, or do you look for opportunities to learn from every experience and every situation? There really is no reason why you shouldn't look for learning opportunities and why you shouldn't seek out little golden nuggets of wisdom in pretty much any and every experience that you have. So, as the week unfolds, take a look at your own experiences and look for opportunities where you can improve what you learn as you go through different experiences. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this podcast. I hope that you will join me again next time. Until then, I wish you joy and well-being.